My name is Reese Langley. Last Thursday, I walked into a bank on 5th Street and asked to withdraw $100. That's it. A crisp 100. To help my elderly neighbor buy groceries after her heating bill ate through the rest of her check. But instead of being met with decency, I was met with a smirk from across the marble counter. That smirk belonged to my older sister, Celeste. She's the branch manager. She looked me up and down, her voice slicing the air in front of a full lobby. "We don't hand out charity here. Try somewhere that serves beggars." People turned. A man in a tailored suit glanced over his glasses. A woman near the window straightened in her seat. And me? I didn't flinch. I didn't fight back. I simply nodded, turned around, and walked out, quietly. But that silence wasn't defeat. It was calculation. What Celeste didn't know, what no one in that bank knew, is that I had full authority to liquidate the one account that could freeze her entire branch in seconds. I didn't come to humiliate her. I came to test something, a hypothesis, and she failed. By the end of the next morning, the lobby would be locked. Security called, her knees would hit marble. And for the first time in 20 years, my family would stop calling me the failure and start asking, "Who the hell is Reese Langley?" Stay with me. Because the withdrawal that really mattered wasn't cash. It was my name. Celeste wasn't always cruel, just consistent. The kind of consistency that wore down the edges of your self-worth until even your reflections felt borrowed. I was the second daughter, the quiet one, the one they forgot to introduce at family dinners until dessert arrived. My mother, Eleanor, used to say I had a soft presence. What she meant was easy to ignore. By the time I turned 14, I had stopped raising my hand in class, not because I didn't know the answer, but because the answers never earned me anything at home. While Celeste paraded around with her student council badges and polished piano recitals, I tinkered with old computers I found by the recycling bins. I learned how systems broke so I could learn how to make them unbreakable. They laughed when I said I wanted to study information systems. Celeste told me I was too dreamy for tech. "You're better with your hands," she said, handing me a mop after dinner. I was 17, so I left, quietly. No tears, no slammed doors, just an old duffel bag, one scholarship, and a plan that I never shared out loud. I worked nights as a digital security temp, first scrubbing metadata, then eventually writing encrypted scripts for startups who couldn't afford full-time specialists. That's where I met R.A. I never learned his real name. He never learned mine. That was the deal. We built Lighthouse 7, a shell infrastructure for confidential capital routing. Offshore liquidity diversified in 7 currencies, backed by rotating fiduciary firewalls. It was beautiful, invisible, untraceable. I designed the trust architecture. He handled the capital lift. By the end of year 2, we had $3.5 billion in quiet flow. He let me choose the name for the holding entity. I called it Valen Trust, after the Latin word for strength. No one ever asked who owned it. That was the point. But I made sure to structure the anchor account within a familiar institution. Crescent First Bank, Celeste's bank. She had no idea the system she bragged about overseeing every Christmas was housing my creation. I reviewed her signature myself. On the onboarding paperwork, she'd signed as the compliance officer for our holding partnership 6 months ago. I didn't do it for revenge. Not then. I did it because there was something oddly poetic about placing your legacy in the hands of the person who swore you'd never build one. I lived simply. 1-bedroom apartment, chipped mugs, soft light, books stacked on every surface. My office was a table I refinished myself. I didn't need extravagance. I needed distance. Distance from the noise, the assumptions, the way Celeste still called me Rue, in that tone that flattened my spine. And yet, when Mrs. Dalloway, the woman 2 floors below me, knocked on my door with trembling hands and asked if I could lend her grocery money, I couldn't say no. Not after watching her ration tea for dinner. Not after hearing the silence that settled in her apartment when the heating cut off. That's why I went to the bank that morning, not to prove anything, just to help someone whose name my family would never bother remembering. But when Celeste saw me, it wasn't surprise, it was delight. The kind predators wear when they smell weakness. I didn't react. Not because I'm fearless, but because I've learned what fear can cost when it's loud. So I left, wrapped myself in that silence, took the train home, opened my encrypted terminal, and stared at the blinking cursor for exactly 1 minute. Just one. Then I typed, "Begin freeze protocol on Valen Trust primary. Initiate verification sweep." I didn't hit enter, not yet. I just sat with it, let the weight of every insult, every dismissal, every time they called me fragile, settle in my chest like steel. And then I whispered aloud, not to anyone, just to the room, "Let's see who's really in charge now." The morning light slanted through the windshield as I stepped out of the car, heels crisp against the sidewalk. The building loomed familiar. Crescent First Bank, downtown branch, Celeste's domain. I adjusted the collar of my navy wool coat, checked the black leather folio under my arm, and walked forward without pause. Inside, everything gleamed like money, pretending to be warmth. Polished stone floors, the subtle smell of citrus wood polish. A receptionist glanced up, smiled automatically. "Welcome to Crescent. Do you have an appointment?" "Yes," I said, calm and low. "It's under Valen Holdings." She typed, paused. Her screen blinked red. Then she blinked too. I just need a moment." "Of course." From across the room, I saw her, Celeste, laughing too loudly beside a regional associate near the self-serve espresso cart. Her hair was curled tighter than usual, the kind of precision that comes from either desperation or guilt. She hadn't noticed me yet. Then she did. Her entire body stiffened, not in fear, not yet, but in confusion. I watched her eyes scan me like a stranger. That's what I had become to her, a variable she couldn't define. She crossed the lobby, heels stabbing each step like punctuation. "What are you doing here?" she said through gritted teeth. "You don't have any business with this bank." I didn't respond. Instead, I turned to the receptionist and handed her the folio. She opened it, scanned the QR strip tucked behind the cover flap, and paled. I'll need to get the branch manager," she said, voice shaking. "Immediately." Celeste's hand shot out, yanked the folio from the receptionist's grip. "Enough! Let's see what my little sister thinks she's playing at now." She flipped the first page, smirking, then the second. By the third, her mouth stopped moving. The color drained from her face. She looked up at me, not with anger this time, but with recognition. She knew that name, Valen Trust Holdings. And now, finally, she knew who sat behind it. The branch manager arrived just then, a tall man with silver at his temples and a voice like calm water. He took the folio gently from Celeste and addressed me first. "Miss Langley," he said with a respectful nod, "we were not informed of an in-person review, but of course we'll accommodate immediately. May I?" I nodded once. He flipped through the documents, his eyes narrowing with increasing focus. Then he stopped, typed something on his tablet, and looked up again. "This is a VIP-level authorization. Primary liquidity request flagged as sensitive." His tone shifted. "Miss Walsh." He glanced at Celeste. "You're listed here as a partner employee on the onboarding documents. Were you aware of your affiliate's identity?" Celeste stepped back, like she'd been physically struck. "No, that can't be real. That's a fake." "It's real," I said, voice even. "You've been working under my signature, indirectly, for 3 years." There was a silence that swallowed the room whole. The junior associates stopped typing. The receptionist dropped her pen. From somewhere behind the counters, a voice whispered, "Did she say 3 billion?" The manager's assistant leaned in, murmured something. "Withdraw authorized," the manager read aloud. $3.5 billion confirmed. Audit flag triggered. Branch lockdown protocol initiated. The receptionist stood and moved to lock the doors. Celeste stared at the screen like it was a death sentence. Then, something broke. She stumbled forward, knees buckling beneath her, and just like that, she dropped. On the marble floor, her voice cracked open, no longer polished or composed. "Reese," she whispered, "please. Don't do this. You don't understand. I have a child. I have a team. If this hits the audit chain—" "You humiliated me for needing $100, I said quietly. Now you're afraid I'll take back what was always mine. Her mascara was beginning to smear. You're my sister. I tilted my head. Am I? You all decided I wasn't part of this family a long time ago. The manager didn't interrupt. No one did. I turned toward him. I'd like to move this conversation upstairs. Executive lounge, please. This doesn't need to be public. He nodded immediately, already pressing the code for the internal elevator. As I walked away, I didn't look back. Not at Celeste. Not at the stunned staff. Not even at the sealed doors behind me. Because power doesn't need to shout, it just walks. The first call came that same night. Not from Celeste, she knew better, but from a number I hadn't saved, though I recognized it instantly. My mother's landline. I let it ring. Then again the next morning. Then a text from my sister Clarissa, the third Langley girl, always the diplomat, always the one who never said anything unless it was safe to say. Hey, Mom wants to host a family dinner. Said it's important. Can you come? No apology, no ownership, just that. Can you come? I almost didn't respond, but then I thought, no. They want a dinner? Fine, let's have a dinner. Friday night came cloaked in that early winter stillness. I wore a deep green blouse, neat slacks, simple earrings, polished but not flashy. I arrived at Delmont Bistro, the family's go-to place for celebrations, at 6:55 p.m. The private room in the back glowed under amber pendant lights. The air smelled like rosemary and lemon oil. A small sign on the table read, "Reserved." For the first time in my life, that word didn't sting. I sat alone for 3 minutes. Then came Clarissa. Chanel scarf, polished grin, the kind of energy that says, let's keep things surface level. She leaned in like we were best friends. You've been busy, she said too brightly. You're glowing. I smiled without showing teeth. Moisturizer. Next came George, our cousin, formerly smug, now cautious. Reese, he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. You look grounded. That's a good thing. Celeste arrived next. She didn't say a word, just sat at the farthest end of the table, eyes down. Her eyeliner was more muted this time, like the confidence had been scrubbed off. Then our mother arrived. Eleanor Langley had aged in ways she never allowed herself before. Softer hair, paler lipstick, but her eyes, those were still the same, sharp, calculating. She looked at all of us and said, "My girls," like it was still 1997, and we were taking family photos on the steps of the old lake house. I didn't answer. I folded my napkin instead. The waitress took our drink orders. Clarissa wanted wine. George followed her lead. Mom ordered chamomile tea. Celeste asked for water. Then the performance began. Reese, Clarissa said sweetly, there's something different about you lately. A calm in your eyes. Are you doing yoga? George chuckled like this was brunch. Or maybe just making some smart investments, he added. I let them talk. Let them circle the edges like coyotes sniffing a closed door. Then Clarissa leaned in a little too eagerly. So, are you okay? I picked up my glass, tilted it just slightly. Did any of you ever ask what happened to grandfather's Pennsylvania land trust? The silence dropped like a curtain. George blinked. Mom shifted. It was Celeste who finally said, that was dissolved years ago, wasn't it? I reached into my bag, pulled out a slim folder, set it on the table like a quiet gavel. The word active was stamped at the top in clean federal blue ink. No, I said. It wasn't dissolved. It was shelved, forgotten, but not by me. Mom's lips parted. You kept it? I rebuilt it, protected it, while you were busy writing me out of everything. The folder stayed closed. I didn't need to show more. The weight of it was enough. The waitress returned then, holding a leather check presenter. Will this be on one bill or separate tonight? She asked politely. I didn't look at anyone. This time, I said, rising to my feet, everyone covers their own. I left the folder behind, walked past the table slowly. Not to make a point, just to leave it. Outside, the air sliced cleaner than it had in months, a kind of clarity that made your breath catch in your chest. I made it halfway to the corner before I heard her. "Reese, wait!" Celeste called, her voice thinner now. "You're not seriously thinking of selling the land, are you?" I didn't turn around. Because that question alone told me everything. They'd felt it, the shift. For once, I wasn't reacting to the storm. I was the one pulling the clouds apart. Monday came quiet, but everything felt louder. I entered through the private side entrance. No lobby, no small talk. The guard at the biometric panel didn't speak, just scanned me in. Upstairs, on the legacy floor, names were carved into marble. I traced one briefly with my eyes. Arthur Langley, my grandfather, and now mine, freshly etched beside his. 7 board members waited in the vault-level conference room. Neutral faces, measured eyes. I laid down the file. "This is not a status report," I said. "It's a structural transition. As of last Thursday, the 1956 Langley Trust merges into Valen Trust Holdings. I am the sole beneficiary. Documentation is verified and certified under federal oversight." They didn't flinch. These were people who dealt in quiet power. Robert Templeton, the oldest, nodded. "You've been preparing this." 14 months, I replied. He smiled faintly. "Your grandfather would be proud." The door opened mid-sentence. Clarissa entered, heels clicking. She scanned the table, found the envelope marked with her name, opened it slowly. Her face stiffened. "This is a formal removal?" she asked. "Under, ethics clauses?" I nodded. "Documented misconduct. Retaliation during fiduciary processes." George bristled. "You're going too far. This is family." "That's why I only took what you tried to hide," I said. "Not everything." Silence. I turned to the board. "Effective immediately, we audit all community accounts. Titles realigned by merit. No more legacy-based placements. We do this clean." The vote was called unanimous. Clarissa didn't argue, not with the paper still in her hand. When they left, I stayed. I walked the hall to the archival wall. There he was, Arthur Langley. And beside it, me. I stood there, not in triumph, but in clarity. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. I remembered what he'd told me once, when I was still small enough to believe in kindness. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, Reese. It's what you clean up. And this mess was finally clean. The rain had been falling steadily when it came, just a whisper of motion beneath the door. No knock, no footsteps, just silence. And a letter. I was still in my coat. The apartment dim except for a single lamp in the corner. I stared at the envelope on the floor. Cream paper. My name written in a hand I hadn't seen in years. My mother's. It took me longer than it should have to pick it up. Reese, it began. No greeting, no affection. Just the name she used, like punctuation. She wrote about a summer afternoon when I was 10. I'd made a lemonade stand with hand-painted signs and a plastic jar marked Dream Vault. Clarissa had kicked over the pitcher before I sold a single cup. I cried. Mom told me not to make a fuss. But in this letter, she admitted the truth. I saw what happened. I knew it wasn't an accident, but I didn't stop it. I didn't defend you. She wrote about the trust, about the choices she made out of fear, signing over rights, letting others take control. I thought I was preserving stability, she said. But really, I was surrendering you. She didn't ask for forgiveness. I know it's late, she wrote, but I'm asking you not to mirror what broke you. You are more than the silence we forced on you. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter in one hand and an old notebook in the other. A faded blue ledger I hadn't opened in over a decade. Inside were scribbled numbers and hopeful diagrams from a child who believed in fairness. Taped to the last page, I'd written, "One day I'll have a vault, and I won't leave anyone out." I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just remembered. The next morning, the air smelled like wet leaves and something older, like memory. I walked to the new office quietly. No entourage, no headlines. Just me, a leather bag, and a stillness that felt earned. The nonprofit plaque by the door was simple. The Langley Initiative. It wasn't named to make a point. Just to make it clear, we were here now. Inside, the walls were bare, the floors unpolished. But the space was real, solid, paid for with money that once passed through hands that mocked mine. I set my bag down, opened the drawer, and pulled out an old savings book. The pages were yellowed. Inside, tucked near the back, was a note from my grandfather. For the one they'll overlook. Use this when they forget who you are. They had, and I did. But not to destroy them. That was never the goal. I withdrew everything they took for granted. My silence, my loyalty, my care. And I reinvested it somewhere they couldn't touch. Where it could grow. Where it could matter. Because the truth is, money doesn't change people. It just unmasks them. And silence? Silence earns interest.